What happens when two 5-year-old boys outsmart their mafia kingpin father to save the one person who saw them as more than heirs to an empire? In the cold, calculated world of Lee Chi-soo, emotions are weaknesses and trust is a luxury no one can afford. But when Glory John, a Nigerian behavioral specialist, is framed and dismissed without trial, his twin sons don't cry or beg. They do something far more dangerous. They shut down their father's entire operation using his own security systems against him. This is not a story about redemption through tears. This is about power, prejudice, intelligence, and two children who learned that justice sometimes must be taken, not asked for. If you're ready for a story that will challenge everything you think you know about family, loyalty, and control, stay with us until the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that break the mold. The guards flanked Glory John like silent shadows as she carried the single cardboard box down the marble hallway of the Hanamdong mansion. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space, each sound a reminder of the cold efficiency with which Lee Chi-soo dismantled anything he deemed a threat. 3 months of her life folded neatly into recycled cardboard. 3 months of progress with two boys who had finally started to trust someone. All of it ending because her access card had been used to breach a restricted area. An area she had never entered. A crime she didn't commit. But Lee Chi-soo didn't deal in explanations or trials. He dealt in risk elimination. Heron and Heyman stood in the doorway of their playroom, watching. They didn't cry. They didn't call out to her. 5 years old and already trained not to show weakness. Heron's small hands gripped the doorframe, knuckles white with tension. His face was eerily blank, the same expression his father wore when making calculated decisions. Heyman stood slightly behind his twin, jaw clenched so tight Glory could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. She had taught them to read body language, to observe, to think before reacting. They were doing exactly that now. Glory slowed as she passed them, meeting Heron's eyes first, then Heyman's. She wanted to say something. Wanted to tell them this wasn't fair, that they deserved better than a world where people disappeared without explanation. But the guards pressed closer, and she knew any word she spoke would be reported to their father. Instead, she gave them the smallest nod, the one they used during their sessions when they had worked through a difficult problem correctly. Heyman's hands curled into fists at his sides. Heron's eyes narrowed fractionally. Then she was past them, moving toward the front entrance where a car waited to take her away from the only place in Seoul where she had felt like her work mattered. The head of security, a stone-faced man named Kong, held open the front door. Your final payment will be transferred within 24 hours. You signed a non-disclosure agreement. Mr. Lee expects you to honor it. Glory stopped at the threshold and looked back at the mansion. Somewhere in the upper floors, Lee Chi-soo was probably watching this on security monitors, ensuring the contamination was properly removed from his sterile empire. Tell Mr. Lee, she said quietly, that his sons will remember this day. Kang's expression didn't change. Is that a threat? It's an observation. I'm a behavioral specialist. It's what I do. She walked out into the October air without waiting for a response. The car door closed behind her with a soft, final click. As the driver pulled away from the mansion, Glory didn't look back. She had learned long ago that looking back only made leaving harder. She had left Nigeria, left her family, left everything familiar to build something new in a country that still looked at her dark skin with suspicion and curiosity in equal measure. She had thought, briefly, that the Lee household might be different. That two boys who had been raised in isolation and cold efficiency might benefit from someone who saw them as children first, heirs second. She had been wrong about the staying, but she hadn't been wrong about the boys. Inside the mansion, Heron released the doorframe and walked calmly to the playroom window that overlooked the front drive. Heyman followed, his breathing still uneven with suppressed emotion. They watched the black car disappear down the tree-lined street. Appa is wrong, Heyman said quietly. His Korean was perfect, but his voice carried the tremor of someone fighting tears. Miss Glory didn't do it. I know, Heron replied. His tone was flat, analytical. Her micro-expressions were wrong. When people lie about serious things, their eye contact patterns change. Hers didn't. Then why did Appa fire her? Because someone used her card. And Appa doesn't investigate. He eliminates variables. Heyman turned away from the window. At 5 years old, he was already tall for his age, but in this moment he looked small. Lost. We should tell him. Tell him what? That we observed her behavior? He'll say we're children who don't understand adult matters. Then what do we do? Heron was quiet for a long moment. His mind worked the way it always did when faced with a problem, systematically breaking down each component into manageable pieces. Their father had taught them this, had drilled into them that emotion was the enemy of clear thinking. But Glory had taught them something else. She had taught them that observation without empathy was just data collection. That understanding why people behaved certain ways was as important as noticing that they did. We find proof, Heron said finally. How? The same way Apple would. We investigate. Heyman looked at his brother with wide eyes. We're 5, and we live in a house with more security cameras than some government buildings. We know where the backup servers are. We know Appa's patterns. We know when the security team changes shifts. Miss Glory said we should never use information to hurt people. We're not hurting anyone. We're finding truth. Heron turned from the window, his young face set with determination that looked disturbingly similar to their father's. Miss Glory also said that justice doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes you have to make it happen. She was talking about social systems and fairness in education. Same principle. Heyman hesitated, then nodded slowly. What do we do first? We wait until tonight, when Appa is in his study doing the Wednesday finance calls. Security monitors from a single station during those calls because he doesn't like multiple people seeing his screen. And then we access the hallway footage from the day of the breach. The system keeps rolling backups for 30 days before archiving. If someone used Miss Glory's card, the cameras will show who. What if Appa already checked? He didn't. If he had checked and found nothing suspicious, he would have investigated further. The fact that he fired her immediately means he accepted the access log at face value. He saw the timestamp and the card number and made a decision. Heyman processed this. Their father had always told them that thorough investigation was essential in business. But he had also told them that sometimes swift action was more valuable than perfect information. Apparently, when it came to household staff, Chisu chose speed over thoroughness. This is risky, Heyman said. Yes. If we're caught. We won't be. We've been watching the security systems for months. We know how they work. This was true. While other children their age played with toys, Heron and Heyman had spent their time observing, learning, understanding the machinery of their father's empire from the inside. Not because they were forced to, but because in a house where everyone was either an employee or a potential threat, knowledge was the only real security. Glory had been the first person who didn't treat them like miniature adults or porcelain dolls. She had given them structured independence, had let them set boundaries, had taught them that intelligence without wisdom was just cleverness, and cleverness without ethics was just manipulation. She had treated them like thinkers, and thinkers, Heron knew, had a responsibility to seek truth. The afternoon passed with excruciating slowness. The boys went through their usual routine. Lunch with the nutritionist-approved meal plan. Mandarin lessons with their language tutor via video call. Physical exercise in the home gym under the supervision of their athletics coach. Everything scheduled. Everything monitored. Everything designed to create the perfect heirs to the Lee Empire. Their father appeared briefly during dinner. He sat at the head of the long table while the boys occupied seats to his right. A staff member served the meal with silent efficiency. Chisu ate methodically, his attention divided between his meal and his phone. Your new behavioral specialist will start Monday, he said without looking up from his screen. Heron's chopsticks paused fractionally before continuing to his mouth. Heyman's grip on his own utensils tightened. We don't need a new specialist, Heron said carefully. Chisu looked at him then. His gaze was not unkind, but it was clinical, assessing. Your progress requires continued professional guidance. Miss Glory was providing that guidance effectively. Miss Glory was a security risk. Based on what evidence? The question came from Heyman, whose voice carried more emotion than was wise. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The staff member refilling water glasses moved a step back, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Chisu set down his phone. Based on evidence you are too young to understand. We understand access logs and timestamp data, Heron said. We understand that correlation doesn't equal causation. We understand that people can be framed, Heyman added. Chisu studied his sons with an expression that might have been surprise on a more expressive man. This conversation is over. The decision has been made. Without investigation, Heron pressed. I don't owe you an explanation, and you don't question my decisions. Chisu's voice didn't rise, but the authority in it was absolute. Is that understood? Both boys nodded, but the compliance was mechanical. Forced. Chisu returned his attention to his phone, clearly considering the matter closed. The boys finished their meal in silence. They were dismissed to their rooms at precisely 7:30, as always. Their father retired to his study for his Wednesday evening calls, as always. The house settled into its nighttime routine, security protocols shifting to night mode, skeleton crew monitoring the cameras. As always, at 9:15, Heron slipped out of his bedroom. The hallway was dark, but he knew every inch of this house. He had counted steps, memorized distances, cataloged which floorboards creaked and which ones were silent. Heyman emerged from his own room moments later, moving with the same careful precision. They had done this before, not for anything serious, just testing, just proving to themselves that they could move through their own home undetected if they needed to. It had been a game, once, a way to feel some small measure of control in a controlled environment. Tonight it wasn't a game. The security office was on the first floor, near the kitchen. During night shift, only one guard monitored the feeds while the others patrolled the grounds. The twins had timed the patrol routes down to the minute. They had a 6-minute window when the guard would be checking the perimeter sensors on the east side of the property. Heron checked his watch. A gift from their father on their 4th birthday. Swiss-made. Precise. Now, he whispered. They moved quickly down the servants' staircase, the one the staff used to move between floors without being seen. Their small size was an advantage here. They could stay low, close to the walls where the camera angles had blind spots. The security office door was locked, but Heron had watched the guards enter the code dozens of times. 6 digits. Their father's methodology was predictable, important dates in number sequences. The code was the month and day of their mother's death backward. He punched it in. The lock clicked open. The office was small, dominated by a bank of monitors showing different areas of the house and grounds. The main computer was locked, but the backup terminal was still logged in from the evening shift change. Another security flaw their father didn't know existed because he trusted his systems more than he should. Heron slid into the chair while Heyman kept watch at the door. For minutes, Heyman whispered. Heron's fingers flew over the keyboard. He had watched enough, observed enough. The system's interface was logical, designed for quick access during emergencies. He navigated to the archive folder, found the date of the breach, and pulled up the hallway footage. The timestamp on Glory's access card showed she had entered the restricted area at 2:17 in the afternoon. Heron pulled up the corresponding footage and watched. The hallway was empty. He fast-forwarded. At 2:16, a figure appeared. But it wasn't Glory. It was Seo Mayunga, the head housekeeper, a woman who had worked for the Lee family for 8 years. A woman their father trusted implicitly. She swiped a card. The restricted door opened. She entered. Heron's hands froze on the keyboard. His mind raced through the implications. What is it? Heyman whispered urgently. It wasn't Miss Glory. It was Seo Mayunga, using Miss Glory's card. How did she get Miss Glory's card? Probably cloned it. Security cards can be duplicated if you have access to the encoding equipment. Heron was already navigating to another folder. We need to copy this. We need proof. 2 minutes, Heyman warned. Heron grabbed a USB drive from the drawer where the guards kept them for transferring reports. He copied the footage file, his heart hammering in his chest in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. This was what their father did. This was how you fought back against injustice in a world where money and power made the rules. You found the truth. You gathered evidence. You struck with precision. The file transfer completed with 20 seconds to spare. Heron ejected the drive, cleared the computer's recent activity log, and slipped out of the office with Heyman right behind him. They made it back to the servants' staircase just as the guard's footsteps echoed in the corridor. They pressed themselves against the wall, barely breathing, as he passed by without noticing. Back in Heron's room, they examined the USB drive like it was a weapon, which, in a way, it was. Now what? Heyman asked. We show Appa. Heron shook his head slowly. If we show him, he'll know we broke into the security office. He'll know we accessed restricted footage. We'll be punished. But Miss Glory will be cleared. Maybe. Or maybe he'll say we're too young to understand what we saw, or that we tampered with the footage. Heyman's face fell. So we did this for nothing? No. Heron's mind was working through scenarios, possibilities, outcomes. We did this to know the truth. Now we need to decide what to do with it. Miss Glory said the truth should always come out. She also said timing matters. That speaking truth to power requires strategy, or you just get crushed. The boys sat in silence, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. They had proof their father was wrong. Proof that he had fired an innocent person based on incomplete information. Proof that someone he trusted was actually betraying him. But they were 5 years old, in a world that didn't listen to children, in a house where their father's word was absolute law. We need a bigger move, Heron said finally. What do you mean? Appa only respects power. Evidence isn't enough. We need to force him to listen. How do we force Appa to do anything? Heyman gestured helplessly at the world beyond their room, at the empire their father had built through ruthlessness and control. Heron looked at his brother with eyes that held too much calculation for a 5-year-old. We use what we know. We've been watching this house. We understand how it works. The security systems, the backup protocols, the redundancy procedures. You want to hack something? Not hack. Override. Using Appa's own systems. The biometric backups require family DNA authorization. We're family. Heyman stared at his twin. You're talking about shutting down the house security. No, I'm talking about taking control of it. Temporarily. Just enough to make Appa understand that we're not children to be dismissed. That we have evidence. That he needs to listen. That's insane. That's power. Heron's voice was steady. Miss Glory said we should never use our intelligence to hurt people. But she also said that sometimes systems are unjust, and waiting for them to fix themselves is just accepting injustice. She was talking about government policy and social reform. Same principle, Heron repeated. Heyman was quiet for a long moment, his 5-year-old mind wrestling with concepts that most adults struggled to navigate. Right and wrong, justice and consequences, loyalty and risk. Finally, he nodded. What do we need to do? Over the next 2 days, the twins moved with careful precision. They maintained their normal routines, gave no indication that anything had changed. But in the spaces between lessons and meals and supervised activities, they were working. Heron had spent months observing the security systems architecture. He knew that their father had installed a redundancy protocol after a system failure 2 years ago. If the primary security network went down, the backup could be activated using biometric authorization from family members. It was designed as a failsafe, a way to maintain control even during catastrophic system failure. Chisu had never imagined his own sons might use it against him. The boys had access to the house's secondary computer room, a space used for data backup and system maintenance. It was technically off-limits, but the door lock was a simple keypad, and they had learned the code by watching the IT technician during his monthly maintenance visits. Saturday evening, while their father was hosting a dinner meeting in his private dining room with associates, Heron and Heyman slipped into the computer room. The backup terminal was more complex than the security office computer, but Heron had studied the interface during their previous unauthorized visits. He navigated to the override protocols, following the menu trees with methodical precision. The system prompted for biometric authorization. Heron pressed his thumb to the scanner. The machine beeped. Verified. Lee Heron. Family authorization accepted. A menu of options appeared. Heron selected System Lockdown with Administrative Override. Another prompt. Confirm action. This will transfer primary security control to backup protocols. Primary system access will be suspended until authorization is restored. Heron looked at Heyman. Last chance to back out. Heyman's jaw was set. Do it. Heron clicked confirm. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then, throughout the mansion, every electronic lock engaged simultaneously. Security monitors switched from live feed to looped footage from the previous week. Access cards stopped functioning. The main gate locked down. Even the internal doors between wings of the house sealed. In the dining room, Lee Chi-Su's phone buzzed with an urgent alert from his head of security. He excused himself from the table and checked the notifications. His expression didn't change, but everyone at the table noticed when he stood without explanation and walked out of the room. Kong, the head of security, was already in the hallway. Sir, we have a situation. The entire security network just locked down under backup protocol. I can't override it from my terminal. Who authorized the override? According to the logs. Lee Heron, sir. 3 minutes ago. Chi-Su's face went very still. Where is he? The system shows his biometric signature originated from the backup computer room. But sir, with all due respect, he's 5 years old. He shouldn't be able to. I know exactly what he's capable of. Chi-Su's voice was ice. Open the backup computer room. I can't, sir. All the electronic locks are engaged. We're locked out of our own security system. Chi-Su closed his eyes briefly, and for just a moment, something that might have been pride flickered across his face before being replaced by cold calculation. His sons had just demonstrated that they understood power better than most of his adult employees. They had also just committed an act that could be interpreted as a direct challenge to his authority. Give me manual override keys for the computer room, he said quietly. Now. 10 minutes later, Chi-Su stood outside the backup computer room. Kong had retrieved the physical keys from the master lockbox, a backup system for exactly this kind of electronic failure. The irony wasn't lost on Chi-Su. His own redundancy protocols were being used against him by children who had been paying attention when he thought they were just playing. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. Heron and Heyman sat in chairs that were too large for them, facing the door as if they had been waiting. Neither looked scared. Heron held a USB drive. Heyman sat with his hands folded on the desk, mirroring their father's posture during business meetings. Appa, Heron said calmly. We need to show you something. Chi-Su stepped into the room. Behind him, Kong started to follow, but Chi-Su raised a hand. Wait outside. Lock the door behind me. Sir, with respect, they've compromised our. They're 5 years old. I think I can handle it. Lock the door. Kong hesitated, then obeyed. The lock clicked, leaving father and sons alone in the room. Chi-Su pulled up a third chair and sat facing his children. He didn't speak, didn't demand explanations. He simply waited, giving them the courtesy of letting them explain themselves. It was more respect than he gave most adults. Heron held up the USB drive. You fired Miss Glory because her access card was used to breach a restricted area. But Miss Glory didn't use her card. Someone else did. He plugged the drive into the terminal and pulled up the footage. Chi-Su watched in silence as CO Mayunga appeared on screen, using a cloned access card to enter the restricted hallway. When the footage ended, Chi-Su remained motionless for several seconds. Then he asked, When did you obtain this footage? Wednesday night. After you told us the decision was final. You broke into the security office. Yes. You accessed restricted files. Yes. You copied evidence without authorization. Yes. Heron's voice didn't waver. Because you wouldn't listen to us when we said Miss Glory was innocent. You told us we were too young to understand. So we found proof. Chi-Su leaned back in his chair. And the system lockdown? We needed you to pay attention, Heyman said quietly. You only listened to power. So we showed you we have it. By hijacking my security network. By using the protocols you installed, the same way you use every available resource to achieve your objectives. You taught us that. You taught us to be strategic, to be thorough, to never accept defeat when we have the means to fight back. Chisu looked at his sons with an expression that was difficult to read. You understand that what you've done could be considered a direct challenge to my authority. We understand that what you did was unjust, Heron replied. And we understand that sometimes justice has to be forced. Miss Glory taught us that. Miss Glory taught you to commit corporate espionage and system infiltration. Miss Glory taught us to think for ourselves, to question authority when authority is wrong, to use our intelligence ethically. Heron met his father's eyes without flinching. We're using it now, ethically, to correct an injustice. The room was silent except for the hum of the servers. Chisu studied his sons, seeing perhaps for the first time the consequences of raising children in an empire built on control and calculation. They had learned his lessons too well. They had become exactly what he was shaping them to be, ruthlessly intelligent, strategically minded, willing to take extreme action to achieve their objectives. The only difference was that they had developed something he had deliberately suppressed in himself, a sense of justice that went beyond personal gain. Restore my security network, Chisu said finally. Will you investigate Co Mayanga? Heron asked. That's not your concern. It is our concern. If we restore your network and you do nothing, then we've just learned that evidence doesn't matter. That truth doesn't matter. That power without justice is just tyranny. Chisu's jaw tightened. You're 5 years old. You don't lecture me about justice. We're 5 years old who just shut down your entire operation, Heyman said softly. Maybe you should listen. The words hung in the air like a blade. Chisu could crush this rebellion with a word, could have the boys confined to their rooms, could fire every staff member who had failed to prevent this, could dismantle every bit of independence they had fought for. But doing so would teach them that might made right. That power was its own justification, that the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. And somewhere in the cold, calculated machinery of his mind, Li Chisu recognized that those lessons would create monsters. I will investigate Co Mayanga, he said finally. Thoroughly. If she is guilty of what this footage suggests, she will be dealt with. If there are others involved, they will be dealt with. This breach goes beyond one employee's access card. And Miss Glory? Heron pressed. What about her? She was wrongly terminated. She deserves an apology, and her job back. Chisu's expression hardened. I don't apologize. Then you don't deserve our loyalty, Heyman said quietly. The words landed like a physical blow. Chisu stared at his younger son, seeing the determination in his 5-year-old face, and understood that he was at a crossroads. His children were offering him a choice, evolve or lose them. Not physically. They would still be here, still living in this mansion, still bearing his name. But they would stop trusting him, stop believing in him, stop seeing him as anything more than a tyrant to be endured until they were old enough to escape. I'll speak with Miss Glory, Chisu said. I'll review the situation. That's not good enough, Heron replied. We need guarantees. We need to know that this won't happen again, that you won't just eliminate people based on incomplete information. I don't give guarantees to 5-year-olds who hijack my security systems. Then we'll keep the system locked down until you do. Chisu stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor with a harsh sound. He walked to the window, looking out at the grounds of his estate, at the empire he had built through ruthlessness and calculation. His sons had just beaten him at his own game. They had identified a weakness in his systems and exploited it. They had gathered intelligence, planned an operation, and executed it flawlessly. They had leveraged their position to force a negotiation. They had done exactly what he would have done, and they had done it for something other than personal gain. They had done it for someone else, for a woman who had treated them with kindness and respect, for a principle that went beyond profit and power. It should have made him angry. Instead, it made him something he hadn't felt in years, uncertain. What do you want? He asked without turning around. Heron and Heyman exchanged glances. They had discussed this possibility, had prepared for this moment. We want Miss Glory reinstated, Heron said. with a full apology and acknowledgement that she was wrongly accused. We want CO Mayunga and anyone else involved in the frame-up to face consequences. And we want a new security protocol. What protocol? Dual authorization for any household staff terminations. If you want to fire someone, you have to present evidence to an independent reviewer. No more eliminating people because they're convenient scapegoats. Chi-Su turned to face them. You're demanding I give up unilateral control of my own household. We're demanding fairness. Due process. The same things you tell your business partners they can expect when dealing with you. Heron's voice was steady. You can't build an empire on trust and then deny that same trust to the people who serve you. Those are very pretty words. They're Miss Glory's words, but they're also true. Chi-Su walked back to his chair and sat down. He looked at his sons for a long moment. These two small boys who had somehow managed to corner him in a negotiation. If anyone else had tried this, they would have disappeared. But these were his children, his legacy, and he was realizing, perhaps too late, that legacy was more than just teaching them to be strong. It was teaching them what to be strong for. I'll agree to your terms, he said quietly. On one condition. What condition? You never pull something like this again. You never override my security systems. You never access restricted areas without authorization. You never take unilateral action that compromises this household's safety. He leaned forward, his eyes hard. You think you're fighting for justice. But what you've actually done is create a vulnerability that could be exploited by people much more dangerous than your father. Do you understand that? Heron nodded slowly. We understand. Do you? Because next time someone wants to hurt this family, they'll know that two 5-year-olds managed to lock down the entire security network. They'll study how you did it. They'll look for similar weaknesses. You've just painted a target on yourselves. Heyman's face paled slightly. We didn't think about that. No, you thought about being right, about proving a point. You thought like children playing at being adults. Chi-Su's voice softened fractionally. You're smart, smarter than you should be. But intelligence without experience is dangerous, especially in our world. Then teach us, Heron said. Teach us how to think like you without becoming like you. Teach us how to be strong and just, how to use power responsibly. Chi-Su was quiet for a moment. I don't know if I can teach you that. I'm not sure I know how to do it myself. The admission hung in the air, raw and honest. For the first time in their lives, the boys saw their father as something other than an impenetrable force. They saw him as a man who had built an empire on ruthlessness because it was the only way he knew how to protect what mattered. A man who had lost their mother to violence and had decided that control was the only answer to chaos. A man who was alone in his own house because trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. Miss Glory could teach you, Heyman said quietly, if you let her. Chi-Su laughed, a short, sharp sound without much humor. You want me to take life lessons from an employee? You wanted us to learn from her, Heron pointed out. You hired her because you recognized that we needed something you couldn't give us. So maybe you need something she can give you too. I don't need anything from anyone. Then why are you so lonely? Heyman asked. The question landed with devastating accuracy. Chi-Su's face went very still, and for a moment the boys thought they had gone too far. But their father didn't rage, didn't deflect. He simply sat there, a powerful man confronted by a truth so simple that only a child could deliver it without agenda. Restore my security network, he said finally. I'll handle the rest. Do we have your word? Heron asked. About Miss Glory, about the investigation, about the new protocols. You have my word. Though you should understand that my word to my children means more than my word to anyone else. If you make me break it, there won't be a second chance. Heron nodded and turned to the terminal. His fingers moved over the keyboard, navigating back to the override protocols. He selected Restore Primary Network and pressed his thumb to the biometric scanner. Throughout the mansion, locks disengaged. Cameras switched back to live feeds. Access cards reactivated. The invisible machinery of security and control resumed its normal function. Chi-Su stood and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. You're grounded for 2 weeks. No privileges. No exceptions. What you did was necessary, But it was also a violation of house rules. Actions have consequences. We understand, both boys said together. And after your grounding is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about security protocols and why 5-year-olds shouldn't be able to hack them. We didn't hack them, Heron said. We used your own redundancy systems exactly as designed, which means the systems need to be redesigned. Because if you could do this, someone else could too. Jisoo opened the door. Get to your rooms. I'll send someone to collect you for dinner. Appa, Heyman called out as their fathers started to leave. Jisoo turned back. Thank you for listening. Jisoo studied his younger son's face. Don't thank me yet. You've just made things very complicated. For all of us. He left, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, Kong was waiting with 3 other security personnel. Sir, what are your orders? Seal the backup computer room. New access protocols. DNA authorization plus encrypted passcode that changes daily. I want a full audit of every security system in this house. If 2 5-year-olds can lock us out of our own network, we have serious problems. Yes, sir. And the boys? Grounded. 2 weeks. Standard protocols apply. Jisoo started walking toward his study. And get me Glory John's contact information. I need to make a phone call. Sir, regarding CO Myunga. I want a full background check. Financial records. Communications. Everything. And I want to know who she's been in contact with for the past 6 months. This wasn't a solo operation. Someone wanted instability in this house, and I want to know who and why. Should we detain her for questioning? Jisoo considered this. No, not yet. If we move too quickly, we'll alert anyone working with her. I want surveillance. I want her watched. I want to know everyone she talks to, everywhere she goes, everything she does. And I want it done quietly. Kong nodded and hurried away to execute the orders. Jisoo continued to his study and closed the door. He stood at his desk for a moment, looking at the family photo that sat in the corner. His wife, holding 2 tiny newborns. The last picture taken before the world became dangerous, before trust became impossible, before control became everything. He picked up his phone and dialed the number Kong had sent him. Glory John answered on the 3rd ring. Yes. Miss Glory. This is Lee Jisoo. There was a pause. Mr. Lee, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I need to meet with you. Tomorrow. Are you available? That depends on why you want to meet. I have information relevant to your termination. Information that changes the circumstances. Another pause. Glory's voice was careful when she spoke. What kind of information? The kind best discussed in person. I can send a car. I'll meet you, but not at your house. And I'll arrange my own transportation. Jisoo felt something that might have been respect. Where would you like to meet? There's a cafe in Sancheongdong. Quiet. Public. I'll text you the address. Tomorrow afternoon. 2 o'clock. I'll be there. But Mr. Lee, if this is some kind of attempt to intimidate me into maintaining my non-disclosure agreement, it's not. This is about correcting a mistake. My mistake. The words felt foreign in his mouth. He couldn't remember the last time he had admitted error to anyone. I'll see you tomorrow, Glory said and ended the call. Jisoo set down his phone and looked out the window at the Seoul skyline. Somewhere in that sprawling city, a woman he had wrongly accused was probably wondering what game he was playing. In the rooms above him, 2 boys he had raised to be ruthless were discovering that ruthlessness without justice was just cruelty. And in the staff quarters, a woman who had betrayed his trust was going about her evening, unaware that her carefully planned frame-up had just been exposed by 2 5-year-olds with too much intelligence and too much heart. His empire, built on control and calculation, was suddenly full of variables he couldn't predict. For the first time in years, Lee Jisoo didn't know what would happen next. And for the first time in years, he found himself caring about more than just maintaining power. He found himself caring about being right. The next afternoon, Jisoo arrived at the Sancheongdong Cafe 15 minutes early. Old habits. Always arrive first. Always control the space. Always maintain the advantage. But when he walked in, Glory was already there, seated at a table near the back with clear sight lines to both entrances. She had arrived earlier, had claimed the strategic position, had denied him the home field advantage. Smart. He walked to the table and remained standing until she gestured to the chair across from her. Mr. Lee, Miss Glory. He sat, noting that she had ordered nothing, not even water. This wasn't a social meeting. It was a negotiation. Thank you for coming. You said you had information. I'm listening. No small talk. No pleasantries. Straight to business. Chisu found himself appreciating her directness. You were framed, he said simply. Your access card was cloned and used by my head housekeeper to access a restricted area. The security breach was real, but you didn't commit it. Glory's expression didn't change. How did you discover this? My sons. They accessed security footage and found proof. Now Glory's eyebrows rose. Your 5-year-old sons conducted an investigation. They broke into my security office, accessed restricted files, found the relevant footage, and then locked down my entire security network until I agreed to review the evidence. Chisu allowed himself a thin smile. Apparently, they learned more from you than I realized. I taught them to think critically and question authority. I didn't teach them corporate espionage. No, they learned that from me. You taught them why it might be necessary. An interesting combination. Glory leaned back in her chair, studying him. So you've discovered I was wrongly terminated. Is that supposed to make me grateful? Am I supposed to accept an apology and go back to work as if nothing happened? No, you're supposed to negotiate. Negotiate what? Terms under which you might consider returning. If you're interested. Glory was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Seoul moved at its relentless pace. Inside, two people sat across from each other, each assessing the other's position and leverage. I'm listening, Glory said finally. I'm offering a consultancy contract, not an employment relationship. Full autonomy in all matters related to the boy's behavioral and educational development. You report to no one but me, and even then only in monthly reviews unless there's an emergency. You set your own methods, your own schedule, your own approach. Salary. Chisu named a figure that was triple what she had been making before. Glory's expression remained neutral. And the reason for my termination? How are you handling that? CEO Mayunga is under investigation. So are several other staff members and external contacts. The breach was part of a larger operation to create instability in my organization. You were chosen as a scapegoat because you were new, foreign, and expendable in the eyes of the people planning this. Because I'm black. Yes. The honesty was brutal. Glory appreciated it more than a pretty lie would have been. And once your investigation is complete, what happens to the people responsible? They'll be dealt with. Meaning you don't want details. And I don't want to share them. Glory nodded slowly. I need guarantees. Real ones. Not just your word that things will be different. What kind of guarantees? First, a formal apology. Written. Acknowledged. Not hidden. Your sons need to see you admit you were wrong. Chisu's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. Second, new protocols for staff termination. No one gets fired based on circumstantial evidence alone. There needs to be investigation. Due process. Independent review. My sons already extracted that concession. Dual authorization for terminations. Then we need to define who the second authorization comes from. Someone outside your direct control. Someone who can actually push back if you're wrong. You want veto power over my household management decisions. I want fairness. Due process. The same standards you claim to value in your business dealings. Chisu was quiet, his mind calculating the implications. Giving up unilateral control went against every instinct he had developed over years of surviving in a world where hesitation could be fatal. But his sons had already proven that absolute control was an illusion. If two 5-year-olds could hijack his security network, then his empire was built on a foundation of false certainty. The second authorization will be you, he said. For household staff matters. You'll have full access to any evidence, the right to conduct your own investigation, and the authority to block terminations you find unjustified. Even if it contradicts your judgment, even then. And if we disagree, then we argue until we reach a consensus, or until one of us presents evidence compelling enough to change the other's mind. Glory studied him carefully. You understand what you're offering me? You're giving a foreign woman you barely know the power to countermand your decisions. I'm giving someone my son's trust the power to keep me honest. There's a difference. Why? Because they were willing to risk everything to prove you were innocent. Because they shut down my entire operation to force me to listen. Because they see something in you that makes them believe in justice more than power. Chisu's voice was quiet. And because I've spent years teaching them to be strong, but I never taught them what to be strong for. You did. In 3 months, you gave them something I couldn't give them in 5 years. What's that? Hope that strength can serve something other than self-interest. The words hung between them. Glory felt something shift in her understanding of this man. He wasn't apologizing because he feared legal action. He wasn't negotiating because he needed her services. He was sitting here in a public cafe, offering her power over his household because his children had shown him what he was becoming. And he didn't like it. I'll need it in writing, Glory said. The contract, the terms, the dual authorization protocols, all of it, legally binding. I'll have my attorneys draw up something by tomorrow. I'll need my own attorney to review it. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Chisu stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Anything else? Yes, the twins. How are they? Grounded for 2 weeks for hijacking my security systems. But otherwise fine. Proud of themselves. Waiting to see if their gambit worked. Glory allowed herself a small smile. They shouldn't be punished for seeking justice. They should be punished for the methods they use to seek it. There's a difference between being right and being reckless. They need to understand that. Chisu hesitated, then added, but between us, I've never been more proud of them than I was when I realized what they'd done. And more terrified. Why terrified? Because they're 5 years old and already more morally courageous than most adults I know, including me. That kind of courage in this world, Miss Glory, gets people killed. He turned to leave. Mr. Lee, Glory called after him. He paused. Your sons aren't in danger because they're courageous. They're in danger because they're learning to be courageous in a world you've built around control and fear. If you want them to be safe, you don't teach them to be less brave. You build a world where bravery doesn't have to be a survival risk. Chisu looked at her for a long moment. And how do I do that? The same way you build anything. One decision at a time. Starting with this one. He nodded once and walked out of the cafe. Glory sat alone at the table, looking at the space where he had been sitting. She thought about the 2 boys who had broken rules to seek justice. About the man who was learning, perhaps too late, that power without ethics was just tyranny. About the choice she was being offered. Return to a household where she would have real authority, or walk away and avoid the complications entirely. It should have been an easy choice. Walk away. Find a position where 5-year-olds didn't need to hack security systems to prove innocence. Find a family that wasn't built on underground empires and dangerous secrets. But she thought about Heron's careful observation and strategic thinking. About Heyman's emotional intelligence and fierce loyalty. About 2 children who were being shaped into something both brilliant and dangerous, who needed someone to show them that intelligence could serve compassion, that strength could protect rather than dominate. She pulled out her phone and texted her attorney. I need you to review a contract. High stakes. Unusual terms. I'll send it tomorrow. Then she texted the number Chisu had called from. I'll review the contract when it's ready. If the terms are as discussed, I'll sign. But Mr. Lee, understand this. I'm not coming back to be an employee. I'm coming back to be a voice your sons can trust when yours isn't enough. That means I will push back. I will disagree. I will insist on better from you. If you can't handle that, don't waste my time with contracts. The response came 3 minutes later. I wouldn't want it any other way. 4 days later, Glory walked back into the Hanamdong mansion. Not through the service entrance this time. Through the front door. Carrying her briefcase. Wearing her professional best. Walking into this house not as staff, but as a consultant with contractual authority. The boys were in their playroom. She could hear them talking, voices carrying through the vast hallways. She followed the sound. They were building something with blocks. An elaborate structure with multiple levels and what appeared to be a security system made from toy parts and string. When she appeared in the doorway, they both froze. Then Heron smiled. Actually smiled, something he rarely did. "You came back," he said. "You knew I would. We hoped, but we weren't certain." Heyman was already moving toward her, then stopped himself. "Old habits. Don't show too much emotion. Don't appear weak." Glory opened her arms. "It's okay to be happy. It's okay to show it." Heyman crashed into her, wrapping small arms around her waist. Heron followed more slowly, more carefully, but he came. And when he leaned against her, she felt him relax in a way he never had before. "We shut down Appa's whole security network," Heyman said, voice muffled against her side. "I heard. That was both brilliant and reckless." "That's what Appa said. Your father is right. You took enormous risks. You could have made things worse. But we didn't," Heron said. "We made them better. You're here. I'm here. But next time you want to correct an injustice, maybe start with a conversation before moving to corporate espionage." Would he have listened? Glory thought about this. Honestly, maybe not. But you'll never know if you don't try. And sometimes the trying matters as much as the outcome. "Miss Glory," Heyman said quietly, "are you going to stay this time? Really stay?" "I'm going to stay. But things are different now. I'm not an employee anymore. I'm a consultant. That means I have more power to help you, but also more responsibility to do it right." "What does that mean?" Heron asked. "It means when your father makes decisions I disagree with, I can push back. It means if staff are treated unfairly, I have authority to intervene. It means you have someone who can stand between you and a world that sometimes values power more than people." "Like a shield," Heyman said. "Like a shield, but also like a teacher. I'm here to help you grow into the best versions of yourselves. Not the versions your father thinks you should be. Not the versions the world expects. The versions you choose." Heron pulled back and looked at her seriously. "Appa is different since you left. He's still Appa, but he listens more. He explains more. He hasn't fired anyone since then. People can change, if they have a reason to." "You're his reason," Heyman said. "He told us. He said you make him think about things differently." Glory felt something warm and complicated in her chest. "Your father and I have a professional relationship. That's all. For now," Heron said with the certainty of someone who observed everything and missed nothing. "For now and for later. I'm here for you too. Remember that." Over the following weeks, a new rhythm established itself in the Hanamdong mansion. Glory worked with the twins on their behavioral development, their emotional intelligence, their understanding of ethics and power and choice. She taught them that strength without compassion was brutality, that intelligence without wisdom was just cleverness, that power without responsibility was tyranny. And slowly, carefully, she began teaching their father the same lessons. It happened in small moments. Chi-Su would make a decision about household management, and Glory would ask him to explain his reasoning. He would default to efficiency, and she would push him to consider fairness. He would choose the expedient path, and she would show him why the harder path might be better. They argued, frequently, intensely, but the arguments were intellectual, not personal, strategic, not emotional. He respected her mind. She respected his intentions. And somewhere in those debates, both of them began to understand that they were building something neither had expected. Not romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But partnership. Mutual respect between two people who approached the world differently, but wanted the same outcome. Two boys who would grow into men who could be both strong and good. The investigation into CO Myunga revealed that she had been working with a faction within Chi-Su's own organization. They had wanted to create doubt about his judgment, to position themselves for a power move when he appeared weakened. Glory's firing had been part of a larger strategy to demonstrate that Chi-Su was making rash decisions, that he was becoming paranoid and unreliable. The plan had backfired spectacularly when two 5-year-olds proved more competent at internal investigation than the adults trying to manipulate their father. Chi-Su handled the traitors with his usual ruthless efficiency. They simply disappeared from the organization. No drama, no public confrontations, just quiet, permanent removal. When Glory asked him about it, he told her only that the problem had been resolved. She didn't push for details. She understood that there were parts of his world she wouldn't change, couldn't change, shouldn't try to change. Her role wasn't to reform a man who had built an empire on the edge of legality. Her role was to ensure that his sons didn't follow him into darkness without a light to guide them back. 6 weeks after her return, Glory arrived at the mansion to find Chi-Soo waiting in the hallway outside the boys' playroom. "We need to talk," he said. "About the boys. They've asked me to make a change to the household security protocols." "What kind of change?" "They want a permanent override in place. One that prevents me from unilaterally terminating any member of the household staff. They want the dual authorization requirement to be baked into the system itself, not just a policy." Glory studied his face. "And how do you feel about that?" "I think it's a dangerous limitation on my authority. I think it creates vulnerabilities. I think it's the kind of idealistic thinking that gets people killed in the real world. But they're right. I fired you based on incomplete information because it was efficient, because you were expendable to me, and I was wrong. If the system had forced me to slow down, to investigate, to justify my decision to someone else, I wouldn't have made that mistake. So you're agreeing to their request?" "I'm implementing it tomorrow. The system will require dual biometric authorization for any staff termination. Mine and yours. No exceptions. No overrides." Glory felt something shift. This wasn't a small concession. This was a fundamental change in how Chi-Soo operated. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand what you've done. You've come into my house and convinced my children that fairness matters more than efficiency, that justice matters more than power, that people deserve due process even when it's inconvenient." Chi-Soo's voice was quiet. "You've made them better than me, and you've made me want to be better than I am. Mr. Lee, Chi-Soo, when we're alone, you can call me Chi-Soo." The permission felt significant, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with trust. "Chi-Soo," Glory said carefully, "I didn't come here to change you. I came here to help your sons. You've done both, whether you meant to or not." He looked toward the playroom where the boys were working on something, voices bright with excitement. "They're 5 years old, and they've already learned that sometimes you have to fight for justice, that sometimes the people in power are wrong and need to be challenged. That intelligence without ethics is just manipulation. Those are good lessons. They're dangerous lessons. In my world. Then maybe it's time to change your world. One decision at a time. Like someone once told you." Chi-Soo smiled faintly. "You're relentless. I'm effective. There's a difference. Not as much as you think." He started to walk away, then paused. "Thank you. For coming back. For giving them something I couldn't." "What's that?" "A reason to believe the world can be better than it is." He left before she could respond. Glory stood in the hallway, feeling the weight of what was happening in this house. 2 boys learning to be both strong and just. A man learning that power without ethics was just tyranny. A household slowly transforming from a fortress of control into something that might, someday, feel like a home. She walked into the playroom. The twins looked up from their project. "Miss Glory," Heron said, "we're building a new security system. One that requires multiple people to authorize important decisions. Want to help?" Glory smiled and sat down on the floor beside them. "Show me what you've got so far." As she helped them build their toy security system, she thought about the real one being implemented tomorrow. About 2 5-year-old boys who had shut down their father's empire to prove a point about justice. About a man who was learning, slowly and painfully, that strength without compassion was just cruelty. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Chi-Soo would struggle with giving up control. The boys would continue to test boundaries and challenge authority. The world they lived in would keep pressing them to choose power over people, efficiency over fairness, survival over ethics. But in this moment, building a toy security system with 2 brilliant children who believed in justice, Glory allowed herself to hope that change was possible. That even in the coldest empires, warmth could take root. That even the most ruthless men could learn to be better if someone cared enough to show them why it mattered. "Miss Glory," Heyman said, looking up at her with eyes that held too much wisdom for 5 years old. "Do you think Appa will really change?" Or is he just pretending because we forced him to? Glory thought about this carefully. These boys deserved honesty, even when it was complicated. I think your father is trying, she said finally. Trying is different from pretending. Pretending is when you do something to make people think you've changed without actually changing. Trying is when you're genuinely working to be different, even when it's hard, even when you fail sometimes. How do we know which one he's doing? Heron asked. Watch what he does when no one is forcing him. Watch what choices he makes when he could get away with taking the easy path. That's when you'll see who someone really is. Not in the grand gestures, but in the small decisions when they think no one important is watching. The boys nodded, processing this. Outside, Seoul continued its endless rhythm. Inside the Hanamdong mansion, 3 people worked together to build something fragile and hopeful. A model of how the world could work if people in power chose fairness over expedience, if intelligence served compassion instead of just self-interest, if strength protected instead of dominated. It was just a toy, just blocks and string and childish optimism. But sometimes the most important revolutions start small. Sometimes they start with 2 5-year-old boys who believed justice was worth fighting for. Sometimes they start with one person who cared enough to teach them why. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they change not just a household, but the hearts of everyone in it. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you think differently about power, family, and justice, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that refuse to follow the usual scripts. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that show us not what is, but what could be if we're brave enough to demand better, and 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 better,